So, this morning Carrie and I are going to share with you, and we're going to be sharing our, oh, there we are, thank you. We're going to be sharing our stories with you. And this week, as you know, we're in Advent and we're focusing on joy. And so, we're going to be talking about joy. And a lot of times people would assume that joy means happiness, or receiving pleasure, or something of pleasure, or that it may mean the absence of sorrow. And when you hear Carrie and my story this morning, you're going to hear a lot of sadness, you're going to hear pain, and you're going to hear sorrow. But even though it may not be evident, there's joy at the foundation of our story. So I just want you to know that as you hear the rest of this. So first of all, I'd like to tell you that I like to journal. So this last few years I've been journaling a lot, and it's probably one of the easiest ways for me to communicate with God, for me to connect with God. And this morning I'm going to read a few excerpts from my journal. I printed them out on my paper this morning, in my notes. So just so you know when you hear that, that way you can understand a little bit better what I was feeling at the time that I was feeling it in the last few years. So let me begin first by telling you how I ended up in LA. I grew up in Salem, Oregon, and I am the oldest of 3 children. My parents raised us in Salem, and I was in the same school district from the time I started school all the way through public high school. I graduated from the same school district that I started in. And the same thing was true of my church. My parents started going to church when I was about 5 years old, and that's when they became Christians. And they wanted us to go to church with them, and so they took us. And we were at the same church from the time I started going to church until I left to move to LA. So same church the whole way through. And even though locations didn't change a lot for me as I was growing up, my perspective on God changed quite a bit. And when I was about 14 or 15, God took me out of a relationship with a boy I was dating, going out with at the time, that he took me out of it unwillingly, and because of that, I was really broken, and I turned to him, and soon after, my best friend became a Christian, and she and I decided that we wanted to share Christ with our friends, and it was really important to us that we had a relationship with God, and that it became more than just knowing God and going to church after that for me. And soon after that, I felt called to be in ministry. And so then I wanted to go to college to become a youth pastor, because I was influenced as a youth, so I wanted to do the same for others. I wanted to see God move in students' lives. So then I went to Christian college, and I became a youth pastor. I worked at the same church that I grew up in, and was an intern there, and became the youth pastor of the high school youth group. So then, as I was doing that, I started dating Troy, who some of you may know, and that was in 2001. He and I started dating. We'd grown up in the same church together, and so we were friends, and then we started dating, and I told him, because he was planning to move to LA in the next fall of 2001, that if we were serious in a year, then maybe I'd consider moving to LA. That he was going down to come to school because he wanted to be a musician. So he went to Azusa Pacific University. And then by that December, he gave me a promise ring and made it really clear to me that he wanted to marry me at some point in the future. So I was all excited, and I figured, okay, I'm just going to start moving down to LA. I'm going there now. And so I looked for a place to live, and the next fall, I started school at Azusa Pacific University, because I wanted to go back for my master's degree after having gone to undergraduate. Oh, that's us moving. That's our last day in LA. So, or last day in Oregon. We got in our U-Haul truck and moved. The person on the far left to you is my brother. Troy's in the middle. He had really long hair. Of course, I'm next to him. And then those are 2 of our friends. So that was us moving to LA, getting ready. Our parents were all sad. So, because I took my brother with me, I said, you need to come. I don't know anybody. So we moved to LA, and I decided I really wanted to go back to school because I wanted to be able to know the Bible better, to be able to teach it. And then I also really wanted to be more effective in ministry. So that was really important to me. So I went to Azusa Pacific University in the fall of the next year, and that's actually when I met Carrie too. And we were going for a degree that's called a Master's of Divinity, which is, I call it my fancy title for I want to be a pastor degree. So then I started school, and I also started helping with what's called Revolution 626, and that was a ministry that Troy began. That's one of our friends at one of our art nights. And Revolution 626 is an open mic night that we had started at the community college next door. And there will be a few pictures that scroll through as I tell you what it's about. So, we started this open mic night. He had started it with one of his friends because they wanted to celebrate the creative arts. So it was an open forum for the creative arts. So we would put up twinkle lights all over these trees, and this one was indoors, but usually we'd be out in this courtyard and people would be selling their artwork or just displaying it. There was paintings and pottery everywhere. People would be painting on site. We had musicians, poets, rappers, dancers, political ranters, all sorts of different people who would be up on the stage and they'd be performing. And over time, we became friends with all of these different people because we would hold this event once a month, and in between, we'd hang out and we'd have dinner and we'd create art together. And I would appreciate art because I'm not an artist. We'd have 4th of July parties where we'd all get together and hang out. So we became friends with them. What our purpose was in all of this, that's our team, by the way. Our purpose was that we wanted them to know that we wanted them, first of all, to be able to express the creativity God had placed in them. That was really important to us. And second, we wanted them to know the Creator that had put the creativity inside their soul. And so that was our goal, was to minister to them. I'm not looking at these at all. But a lot changed in the next 3 years. That was my first year and a little bit continuing on. But the next 3 years, quite a bit changed in my life and in Revolution and in Troy's life too. So after the first year of doing ministry at Revolution, the Free Methodist Church approached us and said, "We see what you're doing, we really like it, we want to invest in you." And we were excited. We were overwhelmed, actually, because they wanted to give us money. They wanted to grant us money to be able to do this ministry that we were already doing out of our pockets. And so we were excited, but we felt like we needed to get more organized. Like we need to have a plan and a vision, and we're probably going to have to start a church. And so we started doing those things. We started moving in that direction. Like, we need to do all these things. We need to put more work into this. And because I was the pastor, or the one going for the pastor's degree, I was placed in charge of the ministry, which was good, but I'd never planted a church. I was a youth pastor before. I was in school. I was still learning how to do this. So it was a bit overwhelming for me personally. And then, as the 3 years went on, the next 3 years, and we're trying to stabilize this transient community of college students and create a church plant, we realized it wasn't going to work. And everything we tried, and all the money that we put into this, and all of the effort that we exerted every day, it wasn't working. We felt like we were failing because we weren't doing what we expected. We thought we were going to have a church plant. We're going to have all these churches all over the area. And me being the pastor of this church plant and ministry, the ministry leader, felt like I'm supposed to have the answers. I'm supposed to know how this is supposed to go, but it's not happening. And so I was continually frustrated. So on January 2nd of 2006, I wrote in my journal, "Abba, I'm afraid. I'm afraid to write goals for myself and resolutions for this year. I think I'm afraid because I will not reach them or know what to expect of this year. I'm graduating in May. Revolution is constantly changing, and I'm not completely sure where it's heading, and my job will most likely be ending. Troy and I may get married, and his career is in a constant state of flux. Lord, it's only January, and I know I must depend on you." Well, things were still kind of crazy, and so here are a few more excerpts from my journal. On January 13th, a week and a half later, "Lord, Troy asked me what is the point of Revolution. That question I could not answer, at least not in the way he was hoping. He wanted the vision and mission of Revolution, and I just sat there frustrated, knowing that I did not have all of those things and wishing that I did. I just am not a visionary. Ugh. In all ministries, there's a visionary, and usually that person's the pastor. I felt like my gifting is being with people, loving them, encouraging them to grow." And then on January